Okay, today we're going to be starting on page 519, Ilse Herman's Little Black Book. Page 519. In mid-August, she thought she was going to 8 Grandstrasse for the same old remedy, to cheer herself up. That was what she thought. The day had been hot, but showers were predicted for the evening. In The Last Human Stranger, there was a quote near the end. Liesl was reminded of it as she walked past Frau Diller's. The Last Human Stranger, page 211. The sun stirs the earth. Around and around it stirs us like stew. At the time, Lisa only thought of it because the day was so warm. On Munich Street, she remembered the events of the previous week there. She saw the Jews coming down the road. Their streams and numbers and pain. She decided there was a word missing from her quote. The world is an ugly stew, she thought. It's so ugly I can't stand it. Liesl crossed the bridge over the Amber River. The water was glorious and emerald and rich. She could see the stones at the bottom and hear the familiar song of water. The world did not deserve such a river. She scaled the hill up to Grandstrasse. The houses were lovely and loathsome. She enjoyed the small ache in her legs and lungs. Walk harder, she thought, and she started rising like a monster out of the sand. She smelled the neighborhood grass. It was fresh and sweet, green and yellow-tipped. She crossed the yard without a single turn of the head or the slightest pause of paranoia. The window. Hands on the frame, scissor of the legs. Landing feet. Books and pages and a happy place. She slid a book from the shelf and sat with it on the floor. Is she home? She wondered, but she did not care if Ilse Herman was slicing potatoes in the kitchen or lining up in the post office or standing ghost-like over the top of her, examining what the girl was reading. The girl simply didn't care anymore. For a long time, she sat and saw. She had seen her brother die with one eye open, one still in the dream. She had said goodbye to her mother and imagined her lonely, waiting for a train back home to oblivion. A woman of wire had laid herself down, her scream traveling the street till it fell sideways like a rolling coin starved of momentum. A young man was hung by a rope made of Stalingrad snow. She'd watched a bomber pilot die in a metal case. She'd seen a Jewish man who had twice given her the most beautiful pages of her life march to a concentration camp. And at the center of it all, she saw the Fuhrer shouting his words and passing them around. Those images were the world, and it stewed in her as she sat with the lovely books and their manicured titles. It brewed in her as she eyed the pages full to the brims of their bellies with paragraphs and words. You bastards, she thought. Lovely bastards. Don't make me happy. Please don't fill me up and let me think that something good can come out of any of this. Look at my bruises. Look at this graze. Do you see the graze inside me? Do you see it growing before your eyes? Eroding me? I don't want to hope for anything anymore. I don't want to pray that Max is alive and safe, or Alex Steiner, because the world does not deserve them. She tore a chapter from the book and ripped it in half. She tore a page from the book and ripped it in half. Then a chapter. Soon there was nothing but scraps of words littered between her legs and all around her. The words. Why did they have to exist? Without them, there wouldn't be any of this. Without words, the Fuhrer was nothing. There would be no limping prisoners, no need for consolation or worldly tricks to make us feel better. What good were the words? She said it audibly now to the orange-lit room. What good are the words? The book thief stood and walked carefully to the library door. Its protest was small and half-hearted. The airy hallway was steeped in wooden emptiness. Frau Hermann? The question came back at her and tried for another surge to the front door. It made it only halfway, landing weakly on a couple of fat floorboards. Frau Hermann! The calls were greeted with nothing but silence, and she was tempted to seek out the kitchen for Rudy. She refrained. It wouldn't have felt right to steal food from a woman who had left her a dictionary against a window pane. That, and she'd also just destroyed one of her books, page by page, chapter by chapter. She'd done enough damage as it was. Liesl returned to the library and opened one of the desk drawers. She sat down. The last letter. Dear Mrs. Hermann, as you can see, I've been in your library again and I've ruined one of your books. I was just so angry and afraid, and I wanted to kill the words. I've stolen from you, and now I've wrecked your property. I'm sorry. To punish myself, I think I will stop coming here. Or is it punishment at all? I love this place and hate it because it is full of words. You have been a friend to me even though I hurt you, even though I have been insufferable. A word I looked up in your dictionary. And I think I will leave you alone now. I'm sorry for everything. Thank you again, Liesl Memminger. She left the note on the desk and gave the room a last goodbye, doing 3 laps and running her hands over the titles. As much as she hated them, she couldn't resist. Flakes of torn up paper were strewn around a room called The Rules of Tommy Hoffman. Flakes of torn up paper were strewn around a book called The Rules of Tommy Hoffman. In the breeze from the window, a few of its shreds rose and fell. The light was still orange, but it was not as lustrous as earlier. Her hands felt their final grip of the wooden window frame, and there was the last rush of a plunging stomach and the pang of pain in her feet when she landed. By the time she made it down the hill and across the bridge, the orange light had vanished. Clouds were mopping up. When she walked down Himmel Street, she could hardly feel the first drops of rain. I will never see Ilse Hermann again, she thought. But the book thief was better at reading and ruining books than making assumptions. 3 days later, the woman has knocked at number 33 and waits for a reply. It was strange for Liesl to see her without the bathrobe. The summer dress was yellow with red trim. There was a pocket with a small flower on it. No swastikas, black shoes. Never before had she noticed Ilse Hermann's shins. She had porcelain legs. Frau Hermann, I'm sorry for what I did the last time in the library. The woman quieted her. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small black book. Inside was not a story but lined paper. I thought if you're not going to read any more of my books, you might like to write one instead. Your letter, it was... She handed the book to Liesl with both hands. You can certainly write. You write well. The book was heavy, the cover matted like the shoulder shrug. And please, Ilse Hermann advised her, please don't punish yourself like you said you would. Don't be like me, Liesl. The girl opened the book and touched the paper. Danke schön, Frau Hermann, which means thank you in German. I can make you some coffee if you like. Would you come in? I'm home alone. My mama's next door with Frau Hatzlaffel. Shall we use the door or the window? Liesl suspected it was the broadest smile Ilse Hermann had allowed herself in years. I think we'll use the door. It's easier. They sat in the kitchen. Coffee mugs and bread with jam. They struggled to speak, and Liesl could hear Ilse Hermann swallow, but somehow it was not uncomfortable. It was even nice to see the woman gently blow across the coffee to cool it. If I ever write something and finish it, Liesl said, I'll show you. That would be nice. When the mayor's wife left, Liesl watched her walk up Himmel Street. She watched her yellow dress and her black shoes and her porcelain legs. At the mailbox, Rudy asked, Was that who I think it was? Yes. You're joking. She gave me a present. As it turned out, Ilse Hermann not only gave Liesl Memminger a book that day, she also gave her a reason to spend time in the basement, her favorite place, first with Papa, then Max. She gave her a reason to write her own words, to see that words had also brought her to life. Don't punish yourself, she heard her say again. But there would be punishment and pain, and there would be happiness too. That was writing. In the night, when Mom and Papa were asleep, Liesl crept down to the basement and turned on the kerosene lamp. For the first hour, she only watched the pencil and paper. She made herself remember, and as was her habit, she did not look away. Schreib, she instructed herself. Write. After more than 2 hours, Liesl Memminger started writing, not knowing how she was ever going to get this right. How could she ever know that someone would pick her story up and carry it with him everywhere? No one expects these things. They don't plan them. She used a small paint can for a seat, a large one as a table, and Liesl stuck the pencil onto the first page. In the middle, she wrote the following: The Book Thief, a small story by Liesl Memminger. The Ribcage Plains. Her hand was sore by page 3. Words are so heavy, she thought, but as the night wore on, she was able to complete 11 pages. Page 1. I tried to ignore it, but I know this all started with the train and the snow and my coughing brother. I stole my first book that day. It was a manual for digging graves, and I stole it on my way to Himmel Street. She fell asleep down there on a bed of drop sheets, with the paper curling at the edges up on the taller paint can. In the morning, Mama stood above her, her chlorinated eyes questioning. Liesl, she said, what on earth are you doing down here? I'm writing, Mama. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Rosa stomped back up the stairs. Be back up in 5 minutes or you get the bucket treatment. Vertracht? I understand. Every night, Liesl made her way down to the basement. She kept the book with her at all times. For hours she wrote, attempting each night to complete 10 pages of her life. There was so much to consider, so many things in danger of being left out. Just be patient, she told herself, and with the mounting pages, the strength of her writing fist grew. Sometimes she wrote about what was happening in the basement at the time of writing. She had just finished the moment when Papa had slapped her on the church steps and how they'd Heil Hitlered together. Looking across, Hans Huberman was packing the accordion away. He just played for half an hour as Liesl wrote. Page 42. Papa sat with me tonight. He brought the accordion down and sat close to where Max used to sit. I often look at his fingers and face when he plays. The accordion breathes. There are lines on his cheeks. They look drawn on, and for some reason, when I see them, I want to cry. It is not for any sadness or pride. I just like the way they move and change. Sometimes I think my papa's an accordion. When he looks at me and smiles and breathes, I hear the notes. After 10 nights of writing, Munich was bombed again. Liesel was up to page 102 and was asleep in the basement. She did not hear the cuckoo or the sirens, and she was holding the book in her sleep when Papa came to wake her. Liesel, come. She took the book thief and each of her other books, and they fetched Frau Hopsel. Page 175. A book floated down the Amper River. A boy jumped in, caught up to it, and held it in his right hand. He grinned. He stood waist deep in the icy Decemberish water. How about a kiss, Shamus? He said. By the next day, on October 2nd, she was finished. Only a few dozen pages remained blank, and the book thief was already starting to read over what she'd written. The book was divided into 10 parts, all of which were given the title of books or stories and described how each affected her life. Often, I wonder what page she was up to when I walked down Himmel Street in the dripping tap rain 5 nights later. I wonder what she was reading when the first bomb dropped from the ribcage of a plane. Personally, I like to imagine her looking briefly at the wall, at Max Vandenberg's tightrope cloud, his dripping sun, and the figures walking toward it. Then she looks at the agonizing attempts of her paint-written spelling. I see the Fuhrer coming down the basement steps with his tied-together boxing gloves hanging casually around his neck. And the book thief reads, rereads, and rereads her last sentence for many hours. The book thief, last line. I have hated the words and I have loved them, and I hope I have made them right. Outside, the world whistled. The rain was stained. The End of the World, Part 2. Almost all the words are fading now. The black book is disintegrating under the weight of my travels. That's another reason for telling this story. What did we say earlier? That's say something enough times and you never forget it. Also, I can tell you what happened after the book thief's words had stopped and how I came to know her story in the first place. Like this. Picture yourself walking down Himmel Street in the dark. Your hair is getting wet and the air pressure is on the verge of drastic change. The first bomb hits Tommy Mueller's apartment block. His face twitches innocently in his sleep, and I kneel at his bed. Next is Sister. Christina's feet are sticking out from under the blanket. They match the hopscotch footprints on the street, her little toes. Their mother sleeps a few feet away. 4 cigarettes sit disfigured in her ashtray, and the roofless ceiling is hot plate red. Himmel Street is burning. The sirens began to howl. Too late now, I whispered, for that little exercise. Because everyone had been fooled and fooled again. First up, the Allies feigned a raid on Munich in order to strike at Stuttgart. But next, 10 planes had remained. Oh, there were warnings, all right. In Molking, they came with the bombs. A roll call of streets. Munich, Ellenberg, Johansen, Himmel. The main street plus 3 more in the poorer part of town. In the space of a few minutes, all of them were gone. A church was chopped down. Earth was destroyed where Max Vandenberg had stayed on his feet. At 31 Himmel Street, Frau Hopsloppel appeared to be waiting for me in the kitchen. A broken cup was in front of her, and in a last moment of awakeness, her face seemed to ask just what in the hell had taken me so long. By contrast, Frau Diller was fast asleep. Her bulletproof glasses were shattered next to the bed. Her shop was obliterated. The counter landing across the road, and her framed photo of Hitler was taken from the wall and thrown to the floor. The man was positively mugged and beaten to a glass-shattering pulp. I stepped on him on my way out. The Fiedlers were well organized, all in bed, all covered. Fickus was hidden up to his nose. At the Steiners, I ran my fingers through Barbara's lovely combed hair. I took the serious look from Kurt's serious, sleeping face, and one by one, I kissed the smaller ones goodnight. Then Rudy. And we're going to end at that point today.